This is on behalf of Scott, Secretary of Treasury, Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, and all of the great geniuses and people we have working, and they are smart, but I don't think you'd be a good steel worker, Scott. I'm sorry. We're going to have to put a little more muscle content into that guy. But he's great. He's great at what he does. We are going to be imposing a 25% increase. We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America, which will even further secure the steel industry in the United States. Nobody's going to get around that. So we're bringing it up from 25%. We're doubling it to 50%. And that's a loophole. And by the way, I have to tell you, I believe that this group of people that just made these investments right now are very happy, because that means that nobody's going to be able to steal your industry. It's at 25%, they can sort of get over that fence. At 50%, they can no longer get over the fence. So congratulations to everybody, and to you for making a great deal. You just made a better deal, right? I said to the group, would you rather have a 40% increase? Because I was thinking about 40 when I came. I said, would you rather have a 40% or a 50%? They said, we'll take 50. I said, I had a feeling you were going to say that. So congratulations. Also, congratulations to Dave, because you got this whole thing started. Congratulations. Great job. Great job. The people here understand the word tariff, and you understand it better than the people on Wall Street. But now the people on Wall Street are finding out. They're saying, wow, you know, Trump was right. You saw today, they had an announcer, Joe Kiernan, CNBC, Maria Bartiromo, who's so fantastic on Fox Business. And they were saying, you know, Trump was right. Look at these numbers. The numbers got released today at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it showed no inflation and tremendous income jumps for workers and for the people of our country. And they go, wow, he was right. He was right. But you knew that. You knew that before Wall Street. The workers knew that. We don't want America's future to be built with shoddy steel from Shanghai. We want it built with the strength and the pride of Pittsburgh. It's Pittsburgh steel, it's U.S. steel, and it's going to be something even more special when you get all that billions of dollars of new equipment that they're going to be investing right here. Billions and billions of dollars. Since I opposed our steel tariffs, and you know, I said that tariff to me is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. I love the word so much. I've always loved it. For 40 years, I've loved it. For 40 years, I didn't understand why people weren't in this country using tariff. They use tariffs to kill us. They use tariffs to take our businesses, not only steel, other businesses too. And we never knew how to use tariffs back, because we had people in the White House that either didn't care or weren't very smart, or both.
Folks, there you have it, the speech that Trump delivered Friday evening in Pennsylvania. Trump has doubled tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%, announced in his campaign-style rally after U.S. markets closed on Friday, and set to take effect this June 4th. I apologize. The move hits a $7.6 billion export sector. For Canada specifically, it's almost a $20 billion industry, and the government still hasn't issued a meaningful response. He claimed the hike would secure steel in the United States and made it very clear no one would bypass the new barrier. The announcement came as negotiations with China were collapsing and Trump needed a domestic political win. Canada exports nearly all of its aluminum to the US, over 3 million tons specifically, and this is annually. And roughly 1/4 of all US steel imports into the US come from Canada. These tariffs threaten one of Canada's most valuable manufacturing sector. When tariffs were set at 25%, US prices rose by at least 16%. Canadian suppliers lost clients, automotive production slowed down, and layoffs began. But at 50%, the Canadian Steel Producers Association says the US market effectively shuts down. That's half of Canada's steel exports gone basically overnight. An announcement came after markets closed Friday. So at this point, no financial reaction could have been priced in. But now, this morning, we notably saw companies heavily reliant on steel and aluminum, such as GM and Tesla, experience stock declines of around 1%. This is due to anticipated increases in material costs, and steel and the Dow fell by 200 points. These market movements reflect investor concerns over the potential for increased production costs, supply chain disruptions, and escalating trade tensions resulting from the new tariffs. A U.S. federal appeals court recently reinstated Trump's authority to impose tariffs, reversing a lower court's ruling that had blocked many of his previous trade actions. The current ruling didn't block industry-specific tariffs like steel and aluminum, which Trump is now using as leverage. Australia condemned the hike immediately. Their trade minister called it economic self-harm. Canada issued a short statement from Dominic Leblanc, and Melanie Joly stated the government had taken note and promised to defend Canadian interests. Industry leaders in Canada are demanding more detailed plans. They're calling for retaliatory tariffs and enforcement measures against steel dumping, especially from China, which undercuts domestic producers, much like in the US. These demands are not new. Similar calls went unanswered after Trump's first wave of tariffs in 2018. Previous efforts to block dumped steel into Canada have been very ineffective. If we lose the US market and keep allowing underpriced imports into our own country, the result is not just lower profits, it's full closures. According to Canadian Steel Producers Association, current dumping practices already distort pricing, and major trade barriers like this one only accelerate losses. Ontario and Quebec are the two provinces most exposed to these tariffs. Ontario produces about 70% of Canada's steel, and Quebec is home to a massive share of aluminum output. Between them, tens of thousands of jobs are directly at risk. From plant workers to suppliers to transportation, the broader ripple effect could impact hundreds of thousands of Canadian jobs. When you factor in construction, infrastructure, manufacturing, and secondary industries that depend on steel and aluminum. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney says he is in intensive talks with the US to secure a new economic and security agreement. But no terms have been released, no timelines have been confirmed, and no retaliation has been announced. We're facing the collapse of a $7.6 billion industry and a potential huge wave of layoffs, and there's no emergency response plan in place. The United Steelworkers Union has called on the government to expand its use of countermeasures, including Section 53 of the customs tariff, to target a broader list of US goods and close loopholes that allow tariff-free American imports. Catherine Gobden of the Canadian Steel Producers Association warns this tariff will disrupt supply chains on both sides of the border. She says Canada's integrated steel market with the US will fracture, a move that also hurts American manufacturers who rely on Canadian inputs. This isn't an isolated decision. It's part of a broader trade strategy. If Trump sees no resistance, he could escalate tariffs further to exports such as lumber and agriculture. In 2018, he imposed similar tariffs on Canada using the same national security justification. Canada's response was dollar-for-dollar tariffs targeting politically sensitive US goods. The pressure worked decently, and the tariffs were dropped in 2019. So there's precedent. Retaliation forces negotiation. This time, Ottawa is delaying. No new tariffs, no economic relief, and no procurement shift to support domestic producers. So where does that leave Canada? A looming tariff that feels like it's been in the background for eternity. No real government plan, no export-dependent industry in crisis, and hundreds of thousands of Canadian jobs at risk. We need targeted countermeasures. We need procurement strategies that prioritize domestic steel. We need investment in Canadian manufacturing, and we need to stop letting foreign dumping hollow out our market. And we need to build using our own materials. All right, folks, well, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out tremendously. Have a wonderful day.